Well, hey everyone, so excited that you've joined us as we continue in our series, Art of Neighboring. And I want to share a battle with you that goes on in our house with every kid. I have 4 of them. And so far, the first 3 have all had this battle, and our last one, she's 8 months, so we're giving her a little time, but this battle probably will come. And it's the battle of the seatbelts. My kids hit a certain age. They want to be independent. They want to do this all by themselves. And usually it's around that toddler age to where they go, I can do the seatbelt by myself, Daddy. And then there is 2 options that happens as a parent. First is going, I want you to experience your independence. So we let them we sit in the car for 10 to 15 minutes waiting for them to get their seatbelt on. It's really awesome. The second option is we have to go. So I'm going to do this. And that option usually doesn't go too well because the kid's usually pretty upset. But here's what I've noticed. Every time this happens with each kid, when they have to ask for help, the defeating look, the anger that starts to take over them happens all the time. And it's like, you got to move on, but it still kind of hurts a little bit to see your kid do that because they're just like, they're like, fine, do it. Or it's like, don't touch me, and they're just arguing and yelling. But the whole idea of asking for help bothers them. And they're only 2. They're only 3 years old. And so this is something that just comes naturally to them. They just hate asking for help. They want to be so independent. Now, as kids, we all did that. But as adults, don't you realize we still struggle with that? We hate asking for help. It makes us not feel right. And I'd say it this way, asking for help makes us feel weak, doesn't it? It makes us feel like we failed. Makes us feel like we're rejected. All those feelings. I've seen it. Being a pastor and counseling people will wait till the last minute to ask for help. Marriage is not going well. They'll wait till the last. They're like, I'm on my last thing. I hope you can save it. That's kind of their quote. Because they hate feeling this. It's the reason they don't ask. But here's the conundrum that I see that goes on. We hate asking, but then we also know the truth about this. And that's this. Asking for help can create the breakthrough we want. Anytime someone has asked for help, got counseling, it's not saying this happens every time, but I've seen an addict be able to break that addiction. I've seen a marriage become repaired. I've seen families come back together because they asked for help. And so we sit in this tension of going, I don't want to ask for help, but I know it's probably the right thing to do. And we'll delay it and we'll wait on it. And so I want us to focus on, what if we changed our mindset on that? What if we started going after help in a different way? And I want to share 2 stories from the Bible that show you someone who did it poorly and then someone who did it well. Because their responses, because these are moments with Jesus. Jesus is interacting with them, and their responses to it created different outcomes. And so I wanted to go to the first one. This is a young man, and he is connecting with Jesus, had a big question to Jesus, wanted his help. And so here's kind of how it's going. He came up to Jesus, and he says, just then a man came up to Jesus and asked, Teacher, what good things must I do to get eternal life? Why do you ask me about what is good? Jesus replies. Now notice this, every time these individuals ask, Jesus always gives a kind of response back. He wants to, okay, let's push into this question. You're asking me a question. He always responds with a question. So you see right here, it's like, why do you ask me about what is good? Jesus replied, there's only one who is good. If you want to enter life, keep the commandments. So he's kind of saying, well, if you think I'm good, and I come from God, then you kind of know, but the guy I want more clarity. Which ones? He inquired. And so then Jesus replied, you should not murder, you should not commit adultery, you should not steal, you should not give false testimony, honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself. The young man's response, all these I have kept, the young man said. What do I still lack? At this point, we can start to assume this young man seems like a pretty good person. He's trying to keep these commandments. And if he's telling us the truth, then okay, he's trying to live a really good life. But yet the question tells you something. He's going, but which ones do I still lack? There's something inside him that he's like, it still doesn't feel like enough. One of the key things you got to also know about this young man is he does have some wealth. The Bible clarifies that. This is the rich young man. And so he's asking this question, knowing he's following the commandments, but also feeling like there's still something that's missing. Asking the deep question, Jesus, I need your help. I feel like life is still not where I want it to be. I think all of us can relate with that question. We've all felt like, man, it still feels off. It feels like it's not enough. And God, I need your help. So he's asking for it. And Jesus gives him the response. Jesus answered, if you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. When the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth. Jesus gives him probably one of the most amazing invites you could ever get. But it came with a sacrifice. He says, I want you to be part of this group, the disciples. I want you to learn from me. I want you to watch my teachings. If you really want to see what you're lacking, I will show it to you. Come live with me. I mean, he would have experienced miracles. He would have saw everything that happened. The one thing Jesus said is, go give your wealth away. Give it to the poor. And this young guy wouldn't do it. Think about his life if he would have received that help. I'm not saying he would have maybe even done it perfectly, but he could have said, I want that, but Jesus, can you help me? Didn't say that. He just walked away. Now, have you ever done that? I think all of us maybe have done that, to where someone gives us some great advice. And it's advice that we really don't want to hear. And we just walked away from it. Those are dangerous moments. Because I think we need help in our lives. We don't know how to navigate life. And just like this young man, he was experiencing everything. He's like, man, I just don't feel like I have it all. I need that next thing. I need more. And Jesus offered it to him. But he chose to stay in his comfort. Chose to stay in what he already had. So then flip it. Let's go to another story where man needs Jesus' help. So here's the story of what's going on here. We have a man whose son is, as described, like possessed. The kid is throwing himself on the ground, talking nonsense, all those kind of things. And so this man is like, I need help. And so he brings it to the disciples, and the disciples can't heal him. And so then there starts this fight that's going on. It's like, why can't you? I mean, you can just imagine the scene. Everyone's like, what is going on? Why is it not working? All those kind of things. Jesus hears it, walks over, and this is where the interaction begins. A man in the crowd answered, Teacher, I brought you my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. So it keeps going. Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? From childhood, he answered. It has often thrown him into the fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. And once again, this guy has now made the request. Look at what Jesus says. If you can, said Jesus, everything is possible for one who believes. So just pause right here. This man, I think we can connect with, is desperate. He has seen his son go through so much turmoil in his life. And as a father and as a parent in general, you just can't imagine that kind of pain. And you hear about this guy who could possibly heal him, and you bring him to his disciples and they can't heal. And then you get the opportunity to talk to Jesus and you're just begging, if you can. And Jesus looks back to you and goes, if I can. And you're like, oh no, did I just mess this up? Did I just say the wrong words? Like, I don't, so what would have been your response? Here's what he responded with. Immediately, the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. You think about it. Go back to the rich young ruler. What if this would have been his response? I do want to do that, Lord. Help me. See, this father right here, this man, different way of going, I need your help. Instead of running away from it, he goes, I don't know how to do it. I don't know what I need to do, but I do believe in you. I just need your help. And to me, that is an answer. Jesus goes, come work with that. If you're not going to run from me, and if you're going to stay here and go, Jesus, I need your help. I need you to step through in this. I need you to come through. I just don't know how to do it all. Well, then we can begin to see and relate to this man's story. Because look what Jesus did. When Jesus saw that a crowd was running to the scene, he rebuked the impure spirit. You deaf and mute spirit, he said, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again. This man's experienced a miracle. His son is now healed. I mean, think about the growth he would have experienced in that moment. The confidence now that he could walk with that kind of faith. The rich young man could have had the similar moment, but he chose to run when he was given that advice. This man could have just balked and said, I guess he won't heal him. Could have just walked off, but he didn't. Instead, he shouted, I need your help. Help me with the unbelief that's in my heart. This guy experienced growth in such incredible ways. And so here's the thing. When we ask and receive help, this is what we need to realize. To experience growth, we must learn to ask and receive help. That's what Jesus wants us to learn in these stories. We've got to lean into it and go, I've got to ask for it and I've got to receive it. Because both men asked for it. Only one of them received it. Only one of them received it. They took the posture, they surrendered and said, I receive your help. Help me deal with the unbelief part of me. Think of the rich young ruler would have just said, help me deal with the fact that I don't know how to give my wealth away. That scares me, God. And I think a lot of us sit in that tension. We go, God, I need you to fix my marriage. He gives you advice. Then the question becomes, are you willing to do it? God, I need you to fix my finances. He says maybe tithe or do a budget or just crazy ideas that you're like, I don't know if that's going to work. But then are you willing to do it? See, I want all of us to experience the growth, to overcome the obstacles we're facing. Jesus wants all of that for us. Wants all of that for us. The question is, are we willing to ask and receive help so we can experience that growth? So here's the first thing. When you're asking for help, you've got to realize it requires courage. Because we know asking for help, it's going to make us feel weak. It's going to make us feel all those kind of things. But really, asking for help is kind of that moment where you look in the mirror and go, I admit, I can't figure this out. I admit I'm out of options. I admit I'm not self-sufficient. Because I think within our culture, we love being self-sufficient. We love being independent. And this, asking for help, makes us feel the opposite. So that's why it requires this courage. To say, I need help, and face yourself. And go, I know I don't want to do this, but I need to do this, because if I keep trying to do it the way I want to do it, it's just not working. So asking for help requires courage. Here's the second part of that. Receiving help requires sacrifice. If you ask for help and get the wisdom, you get the advice that I believe God, or even God using somebody to speak that into you, you've got to realize it's going to require sacrifice. It's going to require time. It's going to require finances. It's going to require something from you. You're going to have to surrender something. Look at the dad. The dad had to surrender his own beliefs and say, I want to believe in you. Help me deal with the unbeliefs that are in my life. The rich young man wasn't willing to give up his wealth. And so that's where the help was left. Receiving help requires sacrifice. Now, you may get to this part and you may be going, all right, Todd, how does this have to do with the art of neighboring? Here's how. When we ask and receive help, when we do that, that gives us the ability to be good neighbors to other people. That's the connection. Look at what Jesus said in Matthew. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. Maybe you've heard this verse. This is the first and greatest commandment, but here's the part. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. It is going to be hard for you to love your neighbor if you can't love yourself. And it's really impossible to love yourself if you keep not asking for help, keep holding back the sacrifices, and not growing. I think Brene Brown, she is a counselor. She has written so many books, said this very well. She said this: we've divided the world into those who need help and those who offer help. The truth is, we are both. Let that sink in. We love to be those who offer help. We don't like this. And the truth is, we're always both. That's what helps us become good neighbors, because we can help see what they're seeing and experiencing, like, oh, I've been there. I want to help you. And so with this mindset, here's what I believe experiencing help teaches us to be good neighbors. Hear me, this whole series is about being a good neighbor, the art of neighboring, especially in this time that we're in. It's got to start with you also looking at yourself and going, am I asking for help? Am I receiving help? Because if only the way you live is people coming to you and you offering help, that's not a relationship. It's got to go both ways. And Jesus called us, think about it, we are called to reach out to people. We are called to help them, but it starts with the change that God does in us first. Because if that doesn't happen in us, how can we reach out? How can we see the needs? Because we haven't experienced it ourselves. We haven't experienced God reaching out to us. We haven't experienced Him taking care of our needs. That's what's got to change first. That's why I share those two stories at the beginning, because it's so important for you to see, which one are you? Are you the one rejecting God's help? Are you the one taking in God's help? Because that question right there can help you begin the journey of becoming a good neighbor and learning to love your neighbor as yourself. Because good neighbors, here's what they do. They see the need. And do you see the need? Let me ask you a simple question. Do you even know your neighbors? If I were to ask you, the houses, or maybe you live in an apartment, people below you and above you, do you know their names? Have you gotten to know them? Do you see the needs in their lives? There's a passage that points this out, and it comes from Matthew 25. Jesus is speaking this, and he says, then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. And the next part of it. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. And I was in prison, and you visited me. Jesus is pointing out, whenever you saw the needs, and you did that for somebody, you did it for me. But even the rest of this verse says, they didn't go, I didn't even know that was you. And Jesus is saying, because you see the need. You let me change your life. That gave me the ability to give you the eyes to see the needs around you, and you just acted because you know what it's like to have that need. As one way I've heard it described, we are all just beggars, and we are just one beggar showing another beggar where the food is. That's how Jesus wants us to live, because we need help. We need help in this life. And when we be able to see that, then God can start changing us, and we become the neighbors that God designed us to be. Second part is God's neighbors address the need. They don't just see it, they do something about it. Look at this passage. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. Let us not just see it, let us not just talk about it, but we do something about it. And when those things start to happen, we start putting those together, that's when life starts to become real. We start to experience love and being able to give it and receive it. And that's why it's so important for us to be good neighbors. That's why it's so important for us to be able to ask and receive help. Just to help you see this all play out, in the midst of this pandemic, there's been a lady who's done something pretty remarkable, to where she took the whole idea of what's going on and people who were just going through so many different things. She saw a need and she addressed it. And so I wanted you to see this. So go ahead and check out this video.
With unemployment at historic levels, there are so many families who need help. There's a South Florida woman who saw the need and decided to connect people who lost jobs with people willing to help. The idea blew up even around the world.
In the midst of a pandemic, there is another one.
When people think about the term pandemic, the way that we're using it today, of course it invokes a lot of fear, but really there's so many positive things that can also go viral.
For Shelley Degelski from Lighthouse Point, it's become a pandemic of love.
Every little bit helps. We'll match you up with a specific person or family, and you can feel like you are doing something to spread love and not fear.
About 4 weeks ago, the meditation teacher posted this video to Instagram. With people losing their jobs in the midst of COVID-19, there was a need. So she started linking people who needed help with those who could help, like Debbie Block.
One family just asked for help for groceries. So we sent them an e-gift card from their local grocery store.
Fast forward a month later, and Shelley is now at 25,000 matches between families.
I really honestly just thought this would be a community thing for the South Florida community, for people that come to our meditation group on the beach on Sundays, and that's it, and that would have been enough.
But volunteers started creating micro-communities across the globe, even catching the attention of celebrities like Deborah Messing.
Pandemicoflove.org is an organization that is connecting people who are in financial need right now, which you can just imagine. There's an extraordinary number of people who are in need.
Because for us, it was just the right thing to do. As we see our own local restaurants and stores closing, we knew that many, if not all of their employees, were losing their sole means of support for their children and their other family members.
Deborah helped 3 families. Shelley says the average request is around $150, coming from a lot of people in hospitality and small business owners.
The majority of people are really just asking to help fill their fridge with food. They're asking for essentials for their children.
And help with COBRA payments after losing health insurance with their jobs. So,
Incredible story. But hear me, I just wanted to show you that one just to get your mind going on this, because I've seen so many even Fountain Springers within our church be doing something. And it may not be on this big of a scale, but taking small steps, helping people within their pain, helping people navigate things. It's just incredible to see those things play out. But that's what I want us to be. That's what it means to be a good neighbor. So I want to finish with these 2 questions. First one is this: are you asking and receiving help? You've got to start there. In order to be that good neighbor, you've got to go, am I asking and receiving help? Am I willing to look in the mirror? Am I willing to sacrifice and take those steps? And then the second one is simply this, is are you giving help? Because if you're asking and you're receiving, I guarantee you God will start to push and say, give it. Because out of that abundance, you start to feel, it's like, man, I'm feeling growth. I feel these great things. God goes, now give it to somebody. Share it with somebody. When we start to do these things, we become the neighbor God designed us to be, but we also become the person God designed us to be, to where we can love in incredible ways. So church, I hope that you will join in on this and start going after, am I receiving and asking for this help? And am I being the neighbor God called me to be? Will you join me as we pray that this would become who we are? Dear God, we thank you so much for who you are and how you lead us. God, I pray that you would guide us in this conversation. Pray that you would show us how to ask